Hey Abby, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great, and we're just going to go ahead and get things started. So, the first question I wanted to ask you is when did you officially get diagnosed with ADHD?
I started showing symptoms when I was about 11, and probably when I was about 12 is when I was diagnosed by a doctor and started on medication.
Okay, that's around the age that I was diagnosed too, actually. So, you mentioned symptoms. So, what exactly prompted your diagnosis? Like, what symptoms were the big giveaways for your parents?
Mainly just an inability to sit still was a big one. I had very high grades, but when it came to like behavioral issues in the classroom, it was just kind of a red flag because my parents didn't understand why I was acting that way.
Right, I understand that completely. And I was really going to ask specifically today, focusing on things pertaining to food and how ADHD affects eating habits. So, are you familiar with that at all? Have you had any experiences?
I am. When I was younger, my parents used to think that I was just incredibly picky. But as I got older, we kind of started realizing, hey, this actually might have something to do with your diagnosis. I would have times where I would not eat for like 2 days because nothing sounded good. Every time I tried to eat, I was like, this tastes like sand. That's what I would tell my parents. It was just, it really affected like my weight, and my parents would be concerned. But it was also like I couldn't function without my ADHD meds, but they were like, you still have to eat even though you're taking this medicine.
Right. So, how have you been able to combat that? Or, I mean, do you still face this problem today?
My biggest thing is because I've been on the same medicine since I was probably about 15, where we found one that really worked for me. So not eating hasn't been a problem as much as I get in a time where it's almost like a comfort food thing, where I'll only eat the same thing for like 3 weeks straight, where that is all I eat, nothing else. And then I'm like, okay, actually, I'm bored of that now, and I have to find something new. So kind of just realizing that I can't force myself to eat things I don't want, and I just have to kind of go with it till that's no longer what I want.
Right. I actually relate a lot to that. And a lot of that reminds me how I have an eating habit with my ADHD where I tend to get obsessions, as people call it, where it's like I always grew up and was told I was a picky eater as well. But at the end of the day, I would only crave certain foods and only that food. And then I'd be obsessed with it for days and just keep eating that same one. Have you ever had that experience before?
Extremely. And it's just, it can get kind of frustrating because, like, especially as I get older and like more mature, I'm like, I can't eat the same thing every day. I'm like, especially because, like, in college, the same thing isn't always a healthy thing to be eating. So it's just realizing that and then trying to force myself to eat something that's healthy for me or just something different.
Right. So, Abby, I was also going to ask you what's some advice you would give to someone who is facing similar issues with their eating habits and ADHD?
Something that I've seen to work for me is instead of trying to just go for a complete different meal than that almost like comfort food that you're like having that like obsession with, like you called it, is just to try to have smaller portions of it and incorporate it into other meals. So you're still getting different and like eating more than just one single food item, but you're still trying to like satisfy that little craving.
Right. I'm right with you. I mean, right now, my obsession is Doritos. And so that's one of those unhealthy foods. And I just wanted to thank you so much for doing this interview today, Abby. You were awesome. And I really appreciate you taking time out of your day to do this and inform others about your experiences and your ADHD.
Of course, I was glad to help.